Hello everyone. As you know, in many of my videos, I try and make them a learning resource, something that can help you learn. And in some of the videos, I've even uploaded PowerPoints to my website that instructors can download and use in their classroom. But I got to thinking, I know some of you are actually instructing yourselves and you're not in a classroom, and perhaps those PowerPoints aren't that helpful for you. So in this video, I'm going to try something new. I'm basically going to make it a video PowerPoint. What you'll see is as a video goes along, I'll ask a question and you'll see that question typed out in blue text followed by a pause icon. When you see the pause icon, that simply means pause the video. Think about that question, answer it, and then simply resume the video. Now I could use your feedback on this. I need to know if this is effective. Does it help you learn? Please let me know. Thanks.
This is an interactive presentation designed to stimulate discussion and illustrate the importance of critical thinking. It can be used by an instructor in a classroom or by an individual if you are instructing yourself. Simply think about and respond to the questions before you proceed to the next slide. Here's how to proceed. When you see text colored blue followed by a pause icon, do exactly that. Pause the video. This is a question to ask yourself or the students. When you see a number in brown, simply list the answers that you think are correct, and then reveal the point to make, followed by an explanation. Today we got a 2000 Dodge Caravan with 3.0 engine and 116,000 miles. The complaint from the customer is that it died. It's now hard to start. It does run, but it has no power, and the check engine light is on. They told us that a week ago the water pump was replaced and the timing belt as well, and now the owner thinks that that timing belt must have slipped. List the things that you would do, starting with the first. Attach a vacuum gauge and get a reading at idle. From the history, we can see that the timing belt was recently replaced, and the customer thinks that that may be the problem. Well, there's always a possibility that something may have gone wrong with the timing belt replacement, so let's look at a vacuum reading. We've got this one running now, and you can see that it's reading about 17 or 18 inches of vacuum. That's important, the number, how much vacuum, but it's also very important that that needle is steady. It's not bouncing around at all. If you have a gauge reading 17 to 22 inches of mercury and it's steady, then you have a normal engine in good condition. So we have good vacuum reading and a steady needle. This is evidence. Evidence of what? And what does it tell you? If the belt replacement had a problem, then the valves and the pistons would be out of time and their movement would be out of sequence, and that would be reflected by a bouncing needle on the gauge. Since we have a good reading and a steady needle, that means the timing in the valves and the pistons is correct, and the timing belt replacement was not the issue. So at this time, I can rule out the timing being a problem. What is the next thing that you would do? Listen to hear the fuel pump run with the key on. Not cranking, but with just the key on. With the key on and the gas cap removed, we can hear the fuel pump run. This is evidence. Evidence of what? And what does it tell you? Well, at this time, I can rule out the fuse, the fuel pump relay, and power making it all the way to the pump. What is the next thing that you would do? We verified the long crank time. It cranks very strong, but it can take several seconds to start. But it does start. This is evidence. Evidence of what? And what does it tell you? If the battery were weak, the long crank time would have not been strong nor consistent. So at this time I can rule out the battery because it cranks strong. What else does it rule out? Spark, compression, and timing. After the long crank time, it would start and try to accelerate with the throttle increase, but it would stumble and stall. At idle, it sounds normal. This is evidence. Again, evidence of what? And what does it tell you? If the spark was not good, it wouldn't start an idle. If the compression was not good, it wouldn't start an idle. And if the timing was off, it wouldn't start an idle. So at this time, I can rule out spark, compression, and timing. What's the next thing that you would do? Well, I scanned for codes. We scanned them and got a code P1491 indicating a cooling fan relay fault. This is not evidence. Why is it not evidence? Although the cooling fan relay can turn on the check engine light, it will not create nor contribute to the original complaint of hard start and no power. So, what do we do with this code? Since it will turn on the check engine light but not cause the hard start, we should ignore it for now and come back to it after we resolve the hard start long crank problem. In other words, it's a secondary problem. Fix the primary problem first and then move on to any secondary issues. So at this point, after obtaining some evidence and after ruling out several possibilities, what do you think the primary suspect is? A fuel delivery issue. What do we do next? Well, we need evidence of fuel pressure and fuel volume. Sounds simple enough, right? But on this engine, there is no easy access to the fuel system. Since there is no Schrader valve and no easy access to check fuel pressure, let's try adding external fuel. Okay, we're going to try and see if we can get this thing to start and run off external fuel. We're suspecting the fuel pump's not running, but there's no Schrader, there's no really quick way to test for fuel pressure. We know we'll have to do that later. But we're going to see if we can get it to run off fuel, off propane. So we'll come in here. Got an easy place to get a vacuum line off right here. We'll pull that off. Open up my propane tank. Okay, Steven, go ahead and crank it. Okay, it's running off of external fuel. Accelerate. Now take the fuel away, and it dies. Try it again. Start it. Runs off external fuel. Takes fuel away and it dies. So we got a fuel delivery problem. We're going to have to tap into the fuel line and find out what our fuel pressure is actually doing. So we raised the vehicle on the lift to gain access to where the fuel filter was. We kind of created our only tap to that since there was no Schrader. We tapped into the fuel line at this quick connector and we installed a fuel pressure and flow gauge. Okay, key on. Crank it. All right. Now it should have pressure and flow immediately when you turn the key on and while you're cranking. How can we have fuel flow with no pressure? The fuel pump is so worn out that it is actually running, but it can't overcome the resistance in the fuel lines to generate pressure. Therefore, the pump can flow fuel, but it can't develop pressure. So what is your next step and why? Well, we installed a new fuel pump assembly. We installed a new fuel pump and filter. The engine started and accelerated normally, and fuel pressure and volume were both at spec. So critical thinking, along with understanding of how the system should work and good testing practices, gave us the evidence we needed to lead us to the problem.